want to introduce myself. I know a lot of you, but not all of you. So I'm Elliot Rubin. I'm one of your representatives for the school board here. And I just wanted to thank Jen Flasker for arranging this meeting. Thank you, Jen. And I'd like to introduce Seth Webb, who is also on the school board, and he's basically the chair of the New Build Committee Task Force. And he's going to give us some information tonight, and we have lots of information, but we're here to answer questions as much as possible as well.
Good evening. Hi, my name is Seth. It's a really distinguished chair that I hold because you get no money and it's volunteer time and it's a really hard problem. So I'm going to tell you about our efforts to how we looked at the problem, how we've tried to solve it, and what we've proposed on the ballot for March 3rd. But as background, I have been a resident of Woodstock for 16 years. I moved here to become the economic development director, and then they made me town manager of Killington. I worked in government for about 20 years in New York, Chicago, Illinois, and Guatemala, and then Vermont, and I've been helping companies with state and regulatory issues ever since. So this is the field that I work in, and I have a West student. I have a 7-year-old at Woodstock Elementary and a aspiring West student who's turning 3 in two weeks. And when I wasn't really involved in the 2004 bond vote. Was anybody involved? Anybody vote? 2004, 2024. Sorry. Yeah. I remember some of the faces, so thank you for coming back. But anyway, I started writing stuff in the paper about what we should do, and I got a call from the school board, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to be on the school board?" That's right. I was like, "Okay," and they're like, "Hey, do you want to run the rebuild committee?" And so that was August, and I said yes. And essentially, I'll give you a quick summary. I'll give you the high-level summary of what we thought about, and then I'll go into more detail, and then I'll answer questions if that works. You know, essentially, we had 3 bad choices. We had, when I joined in August, it was the community had said no to a new build. The vote failed by about 10%, and the primary reason it failed was cost. Costs were going up, inflation was rising, tariffs had come into place, and there were a lot of upward pressures. So that was option 1. How do we do that? And then option 2 was to renovate. And we had lots of studies that had said that a renovation was going to be about the same or potentially more than a rebuild. And then the third option was do nothing. And that seemed to be not really an option because of the safety and welfare of the kids and for maintaining the school and the community. And so what we did was we dug in and to see how could we make lemonade out of lemons. And we had been following what was happening in Montpelier. We're like, how are we going to bring costs down? How are we going to bring costs down? So the first thing we did was we said, well, Act 73 is happening, school education reform, education funding reform. And one of the things that Act 73 called for was to restart school construction at the state level. And last summer, guidance came out from the Agency of Education that said, under the new reforms, eligible schools would be entitled to 20 to 40% of eligible school construction. So we're like, oh, wow, okay, so if we partnered with the state, that's one way we could reduce cost. So we started pursuing that, and we found that you needed to have a pre-approval for that, and you needed to have a bond vote for your match. And so we were like, well, we already have a pre-approval, let's see what we can work with. And then the next thing we did was we said, okay, well, let's see if we can bring the cost down on what the plan was. And so we raised $30,000 and hired architects and construction costing firms to make about $1 million in cuts to the last plan. We took out about 40 windows. We took the gabled roofs and we made them flat. We took the facade that was rounded, flattened that off. We did as many reductions. We did as many reductions as we could without compromising our pre-approval for the state level, and we were able to bring the cost down. We even are instead of buying new furniture, we're going to reuse the old furniture. So we did all the different things that we could to bring the cost down. So the next thing we thought was, well, let's get some private money. there's some wealthy individuals around. Let's see if we can and tap on their good nature and leverage some private money. And the last time there was about $3.5 million pledged if the bond passed in 2024. We've started to go back to those folks and some new folks, and we've asked the old folks, said, hey, can you come in for more? And we're going to new folks, and so far we've gotten 2.5 million in pledges, and I think we're going to be well above where we were in 2024. Those first three pledges off the record are from three individuals, and one is a repeat at the same level, one is a repeat at a double, and one is completely new. And one of those is going to be a matching fund. So we think that'll bring about $1 million in a matching fund. So that really gives us a pathway to get higher. And we're still going back to the other dozen who made pledges before. So if we can leverage state money, if we can leverage private money, if we can make some cuts, and then we can work with the financing to flatten it out and to use those and spread it along a long period, those are some of the things we can do to make this more affordable. And so that's what we did, and what you'll see, and the other things that we did is we've advocated where possible using our bully pulpit to say, hey, if there's other revenue sources like additional taxes from second homeowners, we would support that. And I think the legislature's looking at that right now. I know to the extent that we can be helpful, we want to make sure that property tax exemptions for homesteads are raised. I think, Charlie, is the homestead exemption like $115,000 per household right now? Income, right?
Yeah.
And so, to the extent that we can advocate to get that higher and support the work of Representative Kemble, sorry, I want to recognize Representative Kemble, we'll do that. But what we've come down to is what you have is you have an explainer in front of you. Article 14, or Article 4, sorry, I've done 2 of these today and 6 of these this week. Article 4 ask voters to approve a $111 million bond only if 2 conditions are met. So that means that you would approve an overall project that would be $111 million, and I'll explain why we get to that number. But that we would only proceed if 2 criteria were met. One, we raise 25%. We get 25% of the bond costs from third parties, from federal, state, or private sources. So that's the equivalent of $28 million. That brings the overall local share of the bond cost from $99 million down to $84 million this time, okay? So that's a big reduction. If we can secure $28 million from outside, that brings the bond cost down considerably. That number includes the cuts that we made. And then the second criteria that you'll see on your explainer is we need to pass a law before we can do anything that would eliminate this double penalty on capital debt for school districts right now. In 2024, this is kind of a inside baseball.
I wasn't understanding what it was that was going on with that. So
Yes, and I'll ask my colleagues here to help if they want
Okay.
to chime in. Essentially, and this is how I think of it, is we have a target budget per pupil. It's a threshold. And the state says you can only spend this much per pupil. Okay? And typically, historically, that number was all about like teacher salaries, keeping the lights on, keeping the operations of the school moving. Right? Any capital projects that you would take a bond on or take debt on were separate. They weren't counted towards that calculation.
Okay, right.
And so it was like you had your operating spend and you had your capital spend.
Okay.
And they combined those two. And so the effect is a 2x penalty because we would go so far over the threshold, we would have a 2x. There's actually 2 other items on the warning for this town meeting this year. What do we call it in the
Town
school
meeting.
district? School, it's town, I was the town manager, so I always call it town meeting, but it's actually the school annual meeting. Is we have to replace a boiler, and we're gonna actually pay a penalty on that because of this. Unless Representative Kimball's legislation goes through, which would save us, because it would make anything past, it would apply to us. Basically, it would grandfather us in. So we're thankful to have the support in Montpelier, and we're hopeful it passes. But like, let me just say a couple more things. Article 4, I said it reduces the local share of the bond cost from 99 million to 84 million now. The new plan is designed really as a public school with public dollars. If you look at the building, the cost per square foot is over $100 less per square foot, $100 less per square foot than the new high school built in Burlington, okay? It's $180 per square foot less than what was proposed in Barry, okay? And if you look at similar builds in Massachusetts, our cost per square foot is $260 to $400 less per square foot. So we really, this is not a fancy thing. This is I like to think of it as this is the 2026 version of our 1958 building that will last 75 years. And I'll give you a couple more comparisons if that would be helpful. And feel free to jump in with questions. That was great.
What is, a question, why didn't you just get rid of the sports complex? How much does that cost?
Well, I don't think that was in the interest of I don't think the school board favored, or the school community favored getting rid of the sports complex.
I think what you guys gotta look at is Vermont's losing population hand over fist. Okay, you've got how many students in this school right now?
450, 460.
Divide that by
The new school is supposed to be for 750.
Yes.
That's not true.
You can't.
That's not true.
You can't project that. Vermont, in order to
The
get
school
people
is
here-
designed
That's
for,
what you said the last meeting, though.
the school
Yes.
is designed for 600. That was before we had the final design. This is, the school that's on the proposal right now is designed for 600.
600.
Yeah.
Which is, you do the math, that's almost a 4-year college degree per student, okay? And you're not
What is
gonna-
a 4-year?
A 4-year college degree. You're
What
going
is
to be
the-
paying high school, to put people in a high school, $30,000 or $40,000 a student, which is outrageous, okay? Second, and these are just facts, okay? You've got people leaving Vermont in droves because they can't afford to live here. They can't afford to live here because the tax burden is too low. And also on top of that, they won't move here because the housing's too high. Now, you're all from Woodstock, that's great. You've got an aging multi-million-dollar population there, they're not bringing families in. You have to look around the surrounding area where we have to attract families to move here. Investors won't build housing here, it's not worth it. Businesses won't bring jobs here because they can't find housing, because the jobs don't pay well. You're not looking at the long-term picture here, which is bothering me. And this cost, I've built $100 million manufacturing facilities. A high school for $111 million is unheard of. And I am from Massachusetts, so
Well, how long ago was that you built?
10 years ago. But you're talking about inflation and stuff, that's fine. But, so how long is it gonna take to build this building?
The schedule is 2.5 years.
Yeah, so by that time, you're gonna go over budget, which is fine. You know, things are gonna change drastically, but you're forcing people out of their homes right now if you put this through. They can't afford it. It's just not it's an affordability issue. I'm fine, hey, every child needs an education. You don't need a brand-new school to give a good education.
Where would you like them to go? Where
So
would you-
why don't-
I'm just talking about this, but we can.
You know what, why don't I finish the presentation? I'm gonna try to address
Asking
your
these
concerns.
questions because I don't see how the numbers are adding up. I just
Yeah,
don't.
and that's why we're here, at a public information meeting. Number one is, you're right, affordability. This is a terrible time to have to deal with this problem. You know, I wish that in 1958, when they built the school, they would have started saving for it every year, so we wouldn't be facing this decision. You know, but I think there were a lot of reasons that didn't happen, that came before all of us. And what I have been looking at is what is the most affordable way to do it. And with all due respect, you know, I spent 6 years in Killington, and I've worked all around this region. And I've worked in a lot of different communities around the country and in the world, and I'm very sensitive to the affordability issue. I'm an only child of a single mother, you know, with a deadbeat father. You know, like I understand what it's like to come from a different place. And so I do really take these things to heart and seriously. What I would say is, you don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. And just because we're in a situation we have a terrible, you know, terrible affordability issue, you know, I think the cost of doing nothing is even higher. And I'd actually like to pass this out. This is a comparison. If you wouldn't mind, Jen. This is a comparison of a study that the school had in 2024 to look at a renovation, and it compares what a renovation cost would be against a rebuild and all the different elements. And so essentially, we're gonna have to do something. If this bond does not pass, I'll wait till everybody gets a copy. So before you focus on that, if this doesn't pass, what happens? If this doesn't pass, a couple of things happen. One, the school board's going to have to look at another option. And one of the options is renovation. We have found hi Todd. We have found that a renovation would cost more than a rebuild because primarily, one, we've already done a lot of work on the rebuild. If you guys remember, you passed a couple of years ago, $1.6 million ballot initiative to fund the planning of this. So there's already been 1.68 put into this. And that was to do kind of an evaluation of options and to do the design so that we can get to the pre-approval, number one. So if we did a renovation, we wouldn't be eligible for any state aid because our building is considered 98% depreciated. You know, I was talking to the facilities manager and to the construction firm and you know, about like, what is a life for like repairs or renovation? And they're like, look, he was going even lower than what we have here. He was saying like maybe 20 years on a renovation because some of the structural problems with the building, it's just throwing good money after bad after a while. But if we did this side-by-side comparison, which was really what was driving the decision for us to put this on the ballot, if you look at it, you know, it's a little bit more in construction costs to rebuild than to renovate, but once you put in the aid, the state aid, or any of the third-party funding, state aid, federal aid, or private aid, the cost, it's just hard to argue with. And you know, the cost for the time for the renovation, for the rebuild would be 2.5 years as opposed to on and off over 4 to 5 years. It would be a building that would last for 75 years. And the way that we could structure the payments, they wouldn't start hitting taxpayers until 2030 or 2033, depending on how we structure and the board would have to structure the debt. But if we did a renovation, that's going to happen right away. And we already know from spending several $1 million over the last couple of years of playing whack-a-mole and throwing Band-Aids on the solution that it's very disruptive and it's very costly to go the way that we're going. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious, so how many years would we be paying off this debt? And is there a plan to then start saving for 75 years when we need to rebuild the school? You know, you said it was a mistake last time. When do we start that process, or has that been considered, so that we don't leave people in the future with the same problem that we've been left with?
Yeah, it's a really good question. You know,
It's usually a 30-year bond.
well, yeah, I know the answers. I was just having to see a moment. It would be a 30-year bond, actually. Thank you. It would be a 30-year bond, and in terms of saving, at the municipal level, we were able to pass restricted funds and to be able to save up capital funds. We were able to go and say, how much are our facilities valued at? How long are they going to last? When am I going to have to replace it? What's the replacement value going to be when I have to replace it? And you could start putting away for that. And there was a legal mechanism to do that and have that capital fund. We don't have that same luxury at the school. We're required to take any money to offset taxes. And so saving up for the capital funds is not the same. You don't have the same ability at the school district level because you can only save a little bit. So there's a mechanism to save a little bit, but not like I would like us to do. And so I think in order to have that, we would have to look at a little bit, I mean, that's something we'd have to look at with Montpelier, I think, in terms of changes. Yes, ma'am.
Can you just address, I have two questions, but I'll ask this one because it's pertinent to what she was saying. If we're only paying, or the townspeople are only going to be obligated for 84 million of the cost of the project, why are we raising a bond for 111 and 9?
It's a great question. It's a really great question. It's because the way that the aid is structured, it's a reimbursable. So you have to.
So what you're saying is then, because essentially what happens, it's a 30-year bond, we pay off X amount per year. So the state would be paying alongside us, because you can't prepay these bonds.
Yes, ma'am.
So
that's how. So the way it would work.
The municipal
First of all,
bonds.
I just want to be very transparent here. There's a lot to do. This is like we're swinging for the fence on affordability here in terms of what is the best option and how to get it. But there's some unknowns, right? We have to get rid of that penalty at state legislation. And the other thing is the legislature has to fund the school construction fund. They've set it up. They've started to put some guidelines in place. And there's been some discussion. The governor identified one funding source. We're not sure how crazy he is about that. He talked about the estate tax. We've heard from other high-ranking legislators that they're looking at second homeowner taxes or wealth tax. And so that funding has to be in place. But
so how do we know?
So I'm gonna get to you. I'm just trying to give you context.
I'm really concerned that if we approve a bond for 112 million, we don't know when, the townspeople are going to be upfront paying for the bond repayment schedule until whatever happens. The state could pay for it 20 years down the road.
The way that
And so our taxes are going to go up for the 112 million, not for the 84 million.
actually, if we have to, the way that the question is structured, we have to have 28 million, we have to have, that granted to us. And
But
that
then
would
why
get-
have the bond be for the full amount?
Because that's how the grant's structured, that's how the law is structured. So we're just following in order to get, you have to say, we're gonna pass a bond and we're gonna support it, and then you have to get a grant to go against that bond. That's how the grant program works.
So the tax base, like you're saying,
Oh, no, I understand. We went through this in
I know.
Plymouth. We have a municipal bond.
yeah, so the taxes will go up on the 111 million, not the
Exactly.
84.
Exactly.
So this is kind of double speak to me.
Right.
You know, do we know how much our property taxes will be impacted by this bond?
So it's not double speak, actually, because if we have the funding, the 28 million on, we're only pulling locally for a certain amount. We don't have to pull as much as we have the authority to borrow.
84 million.
What's that? Yes.
And so what is the, again, ask how much is this going to affect people's taxes? Do you know?
It's great. So I can tell you a couple of things. One is a rebuild would be cheaper than a renovation, number one. I'm getting to your, I'm telling you what I know. Number two is individual tax rates, and me to tell you what your individual tax rate is going to be would require essentially a crystal ball. There's about 25, there's essentially 25 elements that we would have to figure out. So what town are you in? What is your house value? What is your household income? Are you eligible for homestead exemptions? If you are eligible for homestead exemptions, there's 10 different categories within that. What's the CLA in your town? When was the last time there was an appraisal? What's happening with state education reform and them changing the entire formula? Does this penalty go away? You know, like all of these different things. So like, and like what is inflation? It's the ATM, the whole complex formula with the state, right? No, so I'm saying, and then you're gonna say like, so then the question is how can we predict that tax rate with all of those things, 3 to 4 to 10 to 20 years out, and I can't, you know, I wish.
Why would we vote on this knowing not how we're going to be, you could say one thing, but then another thing, our taxes are going to go up $5,000 a year each. I'm just throwing a number. How would you expect people to vote on that with all this uncertainty? You've got to give a number.
I mean, that's like saying that you shouldn't buy your house without knowing what your taxes are going to be for the next 20 years. You just don't know.
Well, we do, I don't want my real estate taxes going up knowing that I'm investing in this bond without knowing at a minimum how much it's going to help, and they should be able to calculate that.
But
It's simple accounting. I've been in the business long enough to see.
You don't know what it's going to go up even without the bond.
Right, I think one other point is that we're gonna be paying for schools no matter what, whether it's our own school, or if we don't have a school, then we're gonna be paying that to another school district.
And I think, so there's a bunch of questions, and I want to get to all of them. The gentleman up here has a question. I want to just echo on Jen's point. If we don't do anything, or, so, I showed you rebuild versus renovate.
Right.
If we don't do anything, we don't take care of the school, and the budget pressures increase on the state and redistricting goes forward, just so you know, our school board goes away. We're absorbed into a larger district. We have 1,000 people in our district right now. We go to win in a district about 4,000 to 5,000. We have less of a seat at the table. And so all of a sudden we're in a district of 4,000 to 5,000 kids, and it's a much more competitive environment for capital funding and for priority. And if budget pressures are higher, there's a world in which it's like, oh, let's skip this. Let's kill this building.
Point is that all the talk about redistricting, if we are going to be doing a renovation on a school that's going to be taking us 5 years to do, and it's in bad shape, we're not going to be chosen as a hub. I mean, they are not going to be.
I'm going to go to this gentleman and then to you, Todd, okay?
What I wanted to ask is relative to what you just stated. Last year, Governor Scott appointed a board to come up with a redistricting plan in a ridiculous short period of time, and it didn't happen. But just lately, I think it was last week in the Mountain Times, I saw a preliminary map of redistricting showing 27 districts, I believe it was. Now, my question is, given that redistricting will happen, within the district that is going to include us, Plymouth, Woodstock, Bridgewater, maybe we're bringing in other towns into that core group. Maybe one of those towns has a high school and middle school that's in much better shape than Woodstock's. Why would we vote to spend this kind of money on a school that may not really be necessary? I mean, why should we care about Woodstock School when there might be one in another town that's going to be within our district? Certainly, somebody is going to be getting bused, whether it's students in Woodstock or students from another town coming to Woodstock. What makes Woodstock special that that high school has to exist? Why can't we just say, let's see what happens with redistricting first?
No, I think, I'm going to answer the question and
I
go
was
to you,
just hoping
Todd.
I could follow on, because I think I'm in alignment with the gentleman.
Yep.
Thank you. I think there are a lot of uncertainties right now, I think we all acknowledge that, right? At the state level, there's a big debate going on, and it's a work in progress, right? And I think we all acknowledge that, and I think, I ask myself, it's really a timing thing right now. You know, it's, have we contemplated waiting? What's the urgency? Now, I've heard the argument about local control. I think it's not a good road to go down, because if we as a town go down that road, Hartford can go down that road. What if all towns decide, hey, I want to have local control? Then we're not going to solve the problem as a state. We're just going to exacerbate it, we're going to turn on one another. So I don't think that's a good reason, right, to move forward. So my question is, have we contemplated waiting? Why the rush?
So these are great questions. So it's just, like, why would we support this when we could end up somewhere else and see how the cards fall? Or, you know, and why hurry? Our answer to this was, I think, a couple of things. One, and I saw your note in the paper too on this, Todd. One is the building's failing and we have to do something. So we have to act right now, because the legislature might redistrict, they might not. Like, the only thing that's been talked about so far is administrative consolidations, not facility consolidations. And they've been talking about, like, let's take the superintendents, let's take the superintendent staff, and let's, like, instead of serving 1,000 students, let's have them serve, you know, 4,000 or 5,000 students. So that's all that's been talked about thus far. Now, that's all that's been legislated so far. Now, will they go further? Maybe. Will they not? Maybe not. But all I know is right now we have this building that is failing and we have to do something. And so the reason to act now for us was about optimizing for affordability, because we know that costs are going to rise. We've already seen them go up 13%. We know that a rebuild is cheaper than a renovation. And we also know that this plan works in partnership with the state. Actually, we can't do this plan without explicit state approval, right? There's two ways that the state has to approve this. One, well, we already have a pre-approval for the construction, but they have to approve it by passing Charlie's bill and decoupling so that we're able to do that, and then provide us grant money. So those are two checks that the state has on this. And what I will say is that Act 73 that was passed last year calls for a mixed funding solution, which is exactly what we're doing. We're saying, hey, we'll pay 75% of this locally, and we'll get 25% from the state, federal, and private sources. So we're following the guidance that Act 73 set out. And that's why, so Todd, we felt like we needed to go because costs are rising, we have to do something. This is the best way to go for affordability. And so that's why we're running. Now, to your question is a little bit different, Bruce, which is like, why not just like wait and see how, I'll come back. Why not wait and see like how it goes? And you referenced the Mountain Times from last week. And I think what was in the Mountain Times last week was Representative Conlon. He's on the Education Committee. He put out an initial map. Our district was still intact on that map, okay?
Wasn't in the same district, though.
What's that?
Plymouth was not.
Where'd they put us?
I think
In Peter Conlon's map, it was.
We used to be Ludlow, Mount Holly, and Plymouth here many years ago. And then
I'm
for
pretty sure
some
on
reason,
this new map that I saw.
Yeah, I was trying,
Plymouth
I
was
couldn't read
not
it. It's so
in
small print.
Bridgewater and Woodstock anymore.
yeah, I couldn't, but that's how we used to be years ago, when, way back, I've been in town 41 years. And the thing is, we're going around in circles, we've been doing this for years and it just
With the
keeps-
consolidation? But like, here's.
Well,
here's
they
the-
said consolidate, they threw us in with Woodstock, it was gonna save us money. What's gonna happen to school choice?
Let me
I wanna
finish
know.
with Bruce's
Yes,
question.
go ahead.
So you may say like, that might be the judgment you say, and you say like, I'm not gonna support this. And that's okay, you know? All I can say is this is what we thought. The 18 representatives of the school district, you know, all voted for this unanimously to put it on the ballot because we thought voters said, we knew we needed to fix the school, and we knew voters wanted affordability, and this was the best option that we were able to identify. So, but Plymouth, you may say, hey, we're gonna like see how it plays out because this might not be right for us, and maybe we get redistricted. I don't get the sense that they're gonna break up our district, but like, I don't know. You know, what I can tell you is that the current map, when you referenced the redistricting committee last time, and there was the legislature and the governor appointed a bunch of smart people to think about how should we structure these new mega districts. And they were supposed to come up with 3 to 4 maps. They said, here's one. They said, this is the only one that saves money. And you know what it was? It was the BOCES solution that we're doing in our district, which is a shared services thing. They said, what they're doing down there in that district with their regional partners to share cost regionally is the only way we have evidence that any consolidation will save money. That's what the experts told the governor and the legislature. And you're seeing kind of a ping pong right now, back and forth. Personally, I feel like the criticism of schools has been a little disingenuous. I feel like I watched us go through the budget cycle this year, and I saw all these costs that we don't even control that are driving up our budget, like healthcare, right? Like healthcare has been like, it's like the #1 cost driver, and we're not doing anything for that. But we're like, hey, let's try school consolidation again. That didn't save any money last time. Let's try that one. You know, like, so, you know, that's my personal opinion, but, you know, you have to make a choice. And I'm just here to give you information based on what I've studied to let you know what we came up with.
80%, maybe even more, of the school budget is for salaries and health care.
Yeah.
Now, the health care, that's one of the perks, I guess, that everybody who works in a school gets. They get full medical, probably for the family also. And I don't know if that goes on after they retire, but I suspect to
I
some
guess it
extent it does.
It does.
Name me one other business in Vermont that has that. Why is it so incredibly out of step with the rest of the population?
Yeah, it's a good question. I dealt with this when I was a town manager. We actually, in Killington, we were paying 100% of the premium and the copay and the deductible for and then we had to costs kept going up. We had to do a share with the employees, and that was controversial because, you know, in these public sector jobs, what has happened is your salary has been your not just your salary, but it's been your salary and benefits, and that is what motivated people to go into these service jobs. You know, I can tell you, I worked in government for 20 plus years, and I was like, this is great, but I'm not saving any money, you know, like, and if I want to have a family, like, you know, this is great. I'd love to keep doing this, but then I got lucky. I just got a job somewhere else because somebody just came and asked me. But like, it's not being a public servant is a real thing. So I guess the thing is, historically that's been what it is, and then healthcare costs got out of control, and now our system's kind of upside down. And I wouldn't demonize the public servants for it, but it's like a legacy problem that we have to conquer. Yes, ma'am?
I have 2 questions. First of all, in the health care, that's not true in state employees. State employees pay a share of their health care.
Is that, no, I said in Killington.
I know that, but I'm just saying, you said...
For what he said, yeah.
But you said that public servants don't pay anything.
Yeah, I didn't mean to say that, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah.
The other
You
thing
pay
is
a
that the
portion of
bond
your
is
premium.
$112 million.
Yes, ma'am?
We're going to be paying interest on $112 million when we really only need $84 million.
Well, the good news
Yes.
is, is that the state aid, the way that it's structured, also helps cover the interest portion. So, you know, I'm just saying 75% of the bond cost and 25% of the bond cost. But yeah, interest is part of a bond.
I wanted to go back to the renovation discussion that you had. So one of the things I was curious about, you know, you mentioned that you brought in somebody, paid $30,000 to figure out how to reduce the costs. And I'm not going to address the inflation, tariff, all that other discussion, but it seems to me that if you base it on whatever the 99 we said we voted on last year, and you came up with $1 million in savings, it seems to me that that's not very much, like 1%.
Yeah. No, it's a good
Well, they
question.
had
So,
also,
I mean,
if you
isn't it-
remember, they had actually, it was up to 116 at one point in 2024, and they got it down to 99 by cutting some things. So it was already, it was sort of.
So the building was designed at 116, they valued engineered it down to 99. We cut an additional $1 million. And the issue that you're talking about, part of what we could not, if we want to be eligible for state aid and we want to meet code and regulatory requirements, that's driving a lot of the size. The current building, built in 1958, is 139,000 square feet, okay? It is housed up to 700 students at a time. Our current population is around 450. The new building is designed for 600 students, and it is 158,000 square feet. So that is being upsized by 19,000 square feet. Why is it being upsized? Because the current classroom size in the 1958 building is 500 to 700 square feet per classroom. The state requirement for the new classroom size is 750. So you're going from 500 to 700 to 750 in just classroom sizes. Number two is there's a whole bunch of things that the school does in 2026 and beyond that it didn't do in 1958. Right? Mental health services, STEM, you know, all kinds of programming that didn't exist. So that's the number two. And then number three is like, our building doesn't meet any code requirements. Like, it's just grandfathered in. So we would have to, there's all kinds of stuff that we'd have to do in order to meet code. And we went through this building, the fire department in Killington. It's the same thing. Like, there's a lot of regulatory requirements that have to be met. So for those three reasons, we were limited in what you can and could cut if you're going to house 600 students. Yes, sir.
Seth, why are we building just 600 though? I mean, are we assuming we're going to become a hub? Because, I mean, overall, the state, we're losing population. You know, we had a little bump up during COVID when people could work remote and they came up here. But we're not seeing that any longer. You know, as a lot of folks realize, we're not a real economic powerhouse. Businesses are not rushing into the state. In fact, we're losing them. So I guess the question is, why are we shooting for 600? Why not just kind of go a little above where we are? That seems like a big jump from 400.
460, okay.
460, still a significant jump.
Yeah, so the answer is, the current building is housed up to 700 students. And so when we went through the initial design and the back and forth with the state, part of the calculation is we need you to design to meet your historical average and then whatever your projections are. And it was actually a little bit higher and we lowered it down to 600. But, you know, what we're seeing right now is there's a move in Vermont to regionalize education. Number one, we already serve as a regional hub. We serve 28 communities. And you know, we have 7 towns, Plymouth is one of them, and we have another 21 sending towns. So we're acting as a regional hub right now. And the building is designed to accommodate what we have and plus a little bit of growth. And I do think that the trend is going to be towards larger facilities, more consolidated, larger facilities. That's what the tea leaves would tell you everywhere in Vermont. And so, you know, the guidance from the state, the historical, you know, numbers, the projections, the fact that we're serving right now 460, it's very, I mean, we could easily jump when we have people, it was funny, in November 18th, the Senate Education Committee came and spent the day with us. And we had all of these senators from around the state in there, and they met with the teachers, and they met with the students, and they met with the community. And I remember they were asking the students, "Where are you from? Where are you from?" And they were, you know, from all over. And this one girl, she was a junior. She's like, "I'm from Rutland," And there was two senators from Rutland. And they're like, what? You drive here from Rutland? You drive over the pass? And she's like, this is a much better school than what, Rutland pays, because they have school choice.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. That's my question. How many people are school choice people? And what if school choice goes away?
Yeah.
What is that? I mean, how many currently does Woodstock have for school choice?
Do you know? I don't know.
Plymouth used to have school choice. My kids went to Proctor.
Yeah.
We no longer have, the town voted it out. I was just curious, how many students, you're saying 28 towns right now are kids and for people to go. A lot of people go to high schools based on, each high school offers things a little bit differently. So Woodstock's known for its sports. A lot of people want to go there because they got a great sports complex.
Yeah, and I really don't.
It's not so much academics plays a part, but Mill River was always because of their art program.
Yeah, that's right.
And their plays and their drama club, and that's, each school has its little niche. We went to Proctor mainly because it was a smaller school, and I work over there.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to the exact, I think Ellie's going to look for it off the top of my head, but.
I was curious because.
Representative Kimball, do you want to say anything about school choice and how that's being considered?
So much to say. How much time can I have?
Shorten it to the point, yes or no?
There's still a raging debate about school choice, and right now it was limited to now 18 public schools or private schools that would get school choice. So it's not just about school choice for public schools, it's also about private schools.
Right, yes.
And the notion that with redistricted school districts, that you would have choice within your district, but not outside your district.
That's what I heard, that's what I heard.
If you have a larger district, you have the possibility of pulling in more students. So that's the question,
Interesting.
what does that district look like? And that one map that was offered by Representative Conlon was a discussion point. Now the map wars have started to
Right.
figure out what the districts might look like. So it's, everybody's got a map now. My intern came up with a map, which was not very good. So, yeah, it's very much in a live debate.
Yeah.
I think isn't it 85 students that are tuition, something like that?
That sounds right. I don't know.
Could you address Bruce's comment, though, about, is there anybody that's looking at the whole state and the actual plant of the schools and saying, these are newer, these are older, and factoring that into the redistricting? And saying, like, we have a couple of really good schools here that we could, if we could, I know it just adds another element in that makes it more complicated again, but economically.
Yeah, I'm going to move up here.
Yeah, please.
So my name is Charlie Kimball, and I represent Woodstock, Reading, and Plymouth in the state legislature, and I serve on the Ways and Means Committee.
She's recording it for television.
Terrific.
So if you're on a microphone, that's why.
Oh, really? You want me to? All right.
I didn't want to sit.
Sit right up there, Charlie.
I didn't want to sit up here.
You're doing great, Seth.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name's Charlie Kimball. I represent Woodstock, Reading, and Plymouth in the state legislature. So I'm on the Ways and Means Committee, and I've served in the legislature now for 7 years with a brief 2-year hiatus. Anyway, so there's a lot of unknowns right now as to what those new school districts may look like, or even if they get enacted. So that school redistricting task force was charged with coming up with 3 maps, and they decided to promote this boards of cooperative education service as a different method, a way forward. So there's a few things. First of all, teachers pay 20% of their health care premiums, just in case you're wondering, and they also contribute 6% towards their own health care retirement or retirement plan. So the teachers are actually paying into the system. So
Thank you for clarifying that.
yeah. The state in 2022 did an assessment of all the school facilities. First, it was a self-attestation. The school districts, every building was evaluated as to how, what kind of shape the school building was in. And that was followed up by an in-depth study of every facility by a company called, I think it's Bureau Veritas, and they went through and they looked at every single feature of a school and identified where the schools might be failing, where they were in good shape, and some were, they failed because they didn't have something like an updated fire panel.
So those were immediately in need of being fixed. So it wasn't that the whole facility was bad, but as a condition, the facility didn't work. So part of the charge to the redistricting task force is look at the condition of the facilities that you have within a district, and if it makes, and how many of them have room within their facilities in order to accommodate students from other schools, with the idea of newer and fewer was a good idea. So those studies, we just had the Agency of Education into our committee and asking the person in charge of school construction that, so what does it mean to have all these plans? And they said, well, it means that you have the basis to come up with a master plan. Not that schools took priority over the others, but it really was a good starting point for that. And he pointed to Woodstock's process of being incredibly thorough as an example of what schools should be doing in their master plan. I didn't prompt him, he just came out with it. I was like, cool. We also had the Secretary of Education in the committee, and we're talking about, well, what's going on with school construction? And Seth talked about the governor had identified maybe using the estate tax, and it's a really inconsistent and lumpy way to pay for new schools, because it's, if there's certain waterfall in excess of what the state projects, then it would go into the school construction fund. It's only paid into that fund twice in the last 10 years. So it would have to be different than that. And the estate tax is, that was $25 million that came in that. So anyway, so there's no set method for paying for school construction yet, and the Secretary of Education said that. But she also said at the same time, Woodstock or Mountain Views needs to think bigger. You need to think about the bigger region that you're going to be able to service. It's not just your existing communities. And they had said that before. I had heard that from the Deputy Secretary of Education, and this was from the Secretary of Education. So it really gave some credence to the idea of being a hub school. Now, there's no definite designation as a hub school at this point or a regional school, but that was encouraging from the idea that Woodstock's already doing it and meeting the needs of 28 communities and doing a great job that way. So it's, that was very positive in the sense that Woodstock is well positioned. And why is the question, I think, facilities? Because it's already handling a geography which is pretty diverse, whereas Hartford or Windsor have the river right against them, so they can't reach out to such a bigger geographical area. And it has for so long been a union school anyway. When I went to school there in '78, it was a union school then.
And, I want to echo one thing. Thank you so much. The plan that we have right now, 600 students, that could be expanded to 750. And if the state wants to, they could make it in the final design, have us the ability to add up to 1,000 students. So we purposely didn't over-design for what we have right now, and so that was a big question, like, what number do you want to go to? It's like, well, let's cover what we have right now. We know the move is towards larger regional hubs. We're going to go to what we have with a little bit of growth, and then we're going to have an expansion plan within our permit for 750, and then we have the ability, if the state, with working in partnership with the state, to make that site work for 1,000. Yes, ma'am.
About, if we approve this, and then the state redistricting comes through, and it turns out that several other towns are now part of our district, or perhaps we're not part of the district, do those towns that come into the district start to absorb some of the cost of this automatically without voting on it, or how does that work then, when we have a new district?
I'm going to take a shot, and then Charlie will correct me. The answer is, if you're redistricted, you're going to have to take on a prorated portion of the debt of the schools that you're able to access. You will always pay for a school, no matter where you are in Vermont. If we,
So it
if
could
we,
lower our cost.
so if we got more people to our district, the bond would be shared among a larger population, bringing our costs down. Now, that is a very hard thing to do, to come up with a calculation and to figure out a percentage, and it's politically a kind of a hot potato. So I don't know how fast it'll happen, but I do think we're in a much more likely position to be the recipient of more students if we show that we're ready to work in partnership with the state. Charlie, what did I?
So there was created the State Aid for School Construction Task Force, created of several people, and they came out with a report in December, and then we reviewed it in January, and it was, what do you do with all the legacy debt? Or they were really trying to come up with what formula to use for calculating state aid for school construction. And in the end, they said, well, we don't have new districts, so we really don't know. But they came up with 5 recommendations on how to treat debt. And surprisingly, there's 2 things. One is the level of school debt as a percent of the budgets that are the school budgets in Vermont is actually pretty low compared to other states. And that makes sense because we haven't built any new schools in a long time, with a couple of exceptions. So that was one. It didn't say that we have the capacity to, but the other thing is that if you're going to have a lot of school consolidation, where does that debt go? And we have, some experience with this with Act 46. So we had the consolidation of other districts into fewer districts, and those districts did take on that school debt, and then the assets became part of the districts as well. In terms of what happens if they're redistricted and you're built a new school, that's really unsure. I don't know. There's so many unknowns.
Yes, ma'am. We haven't asked any of the questions in the back.
Well, I think I'd like to ask the reverse question is, what happens if we don't vote to do the new school and they redistricted? Where do you think we fall?
Wait, there were 2 parts to that question. First of all, what happens if the bond doesn't pass?
That's correct.
We won't be eligible for state aid.
Right.
We're going to lose the private pledges.
Right.
Voters are going to need to consider a more expensive plan, or this plan again. Well, I mean, the truth is, it'll be up to the school board, which may be a little bit different than it is right now, but the school board is going to have to do something, and I would imagine they would bring something to the ballot in November. Either this again and try it again, or they would bring a potentially more expensive proposal, because those are the only 2 options. Now, what happens, then the second question was about redistricting.
Yes, like how does that affect the redistricting analysis?
I don't really think it does, because you're looking at that the state has figured on newer and fewer. So where can it build a fewer number of schools? The part that hasn't been solved for yet is how to really provide state aid to school construction to encourage newer and fewer better schools. And that hasn't been identified. Now, there are a couple of potential funding sources, and Seth had mentioned a couple of proposals that have been put out there, whether or not you can increase the taxes on second homes to pay for new school construction. That's an idea. We are moving forward with being able to separate primary homes from second homes and other properties, so that in 2 years we'll have the ability to start taxing second homes at a different or same rate. Because right now, in many communities, second homeowners have a lower rate than primary homeowners, which is just bonkers. So that doesn't work. So you'll have that ability. There's ideas being floated about increasing or creating a new income tax for those earning more than $500,000 a year, or those earning more than $1 million a year. And that does exist in other states. Vermont is already a pretty highly taxed state. And part of it is not just your property tax, but also when you combine then your income tax and all the other taxes. So it's very sensitive to not taxing ourselves out of being an attractive place to live. So those are some of the responses to those initiatives. And then somebody said, increase the rooms and meals tax. Like, oof, we're already 10%, what are we gonna do there? There's already 3% surcharge on short-term rentals. So anyway, so there's everything, trying to figure out the right balance of where that money's gonna come from. Nobody's come up with a magic potion to that yet.
And Brandon has a question, so I'm gonna go to him, but I just wanna say, like, I've worked in a bunch of states, and I've been here for 16 years. We're lucky to have this guy in Montpelier, who, so just to be clear, like, even if you don't vote for the bond, I'm just giving you information, but we should keep him. But well, yes, Brandon.
Seth, thanks for your hard work. This is a lot of work. And I appreciate that you guys are all doing this volunteer. Could you talk for a minute about the ratios? Like, so our school, so Plymouth, Bridgewater, Killington, and Woodstock, there's a fifth town that we,
Pomfret.
I think so, that we like.
Barnard, that's right, Barnard.
So the whole Gold Town concept, right, we have a lot more real estate than students. And so our grand list is high, much higher than the number of our students. So I'm curious about like, if we separate the bond out, or sorry, if we include the bond in sort of the rest of the property tax burden, what's the difference? So like if we do this, how much does the bond relate to sort of the rest of the formula for funding? Like what's $100 million over 30 years in our funding formula? Is sort of the question.
And to follow one, just to Brandon's question, what do we do to get out of this gold town status?
We gotta move.
That's where we gotta get out.
I know, I was in Chicago in 2004, and I think I got a text on my BlackBerry that Killington was seceding. Little did I know I would be the town manager of Killington a decade later. But what does this bond do to the tax rate? I mean, I think that was your basic question, right?
If you take a 30-year period, how much is $100 million compared to the what Plymouth owes into the state system?
Yep.
And I totally appreciate you don't have that math off the top of your head, but just for context, you know.
I can't answer that question, but I'll answer a different question. And that is, how would state aid work? So the current construct is to borrow what Rhode Island is doing. And in Rhode Island, the local school districts go out and they bond, but then the state provides the money to pay for the annual debt service. So it's not an upfront grant, it's payment on the bond itself. That's the current construct. Is that where we're gonna end? Maybe. So we still don't know that. The other thing about the school district, you're right. One of the things we're looking at in terms of equity is grand list per student. Now, because you referenced it, in the new map that came out that Peter Conlon offered, this Windsor Central or Mountain Views has the highest grand list per student of any district in the state. So when I talked to somebody else in the tax department, they said, ooh, that's not gonna work. Like, all right, so we gotta get bigger. So we need more towns in order to make it more equitable so that it doesn't look like, because there's something called supplemental district spending, which is a whole other conversation. But we're in this between time where we're operating under the current formula for paying for education. We're all vote on our school budgets, and then the state has to figure out how much do we have to charge in property taxes to make it all balance. Whereas in the future, it would go to a foundation formula, so the schools would get what the state determines they should get to educate the students and based on the characteristics of those students. It's a totally different way of looking at it, and that's what was approved in legislation last year, but doesn't take effect until 2028. So in most states, I'm sorry, I'll shut
No, I mean, this is part of the reason it's so difficult to look into the future and to answer those questions.
In most states, they adopt the foundation formula because the schools aren't spending enough money. And in Vermont, the foundation formula was kind of embraced to say, we want to do this, so we spend less money. Like, it's different. I don't know if anybody's following New York, they're trying to figure out a way to actually decrease their class size. At the same time, we're trying to figure out a way to increase our class size. So it's like, anyway, I don't know if that answers anything.
But I just want to point out, you asked about facilities earlier, and Charlie's point about this, like, we have enough information to begin a master plan. If the state wants to come up with a master plan for facilities, that could take years, right?
Actually,
I mean, could that, and what I think is what was nice that I think it's Mr. Donahue at the agency referenced when he said that Mountain View Supervisory Union did it right is In 2017, we started this process where we did a master plan. We looked at the whole campus and the facilities. We did a diagnostic. We started looking at like, what about repair versus renovate versus rebuild? They went through a number of machinations to get to the proposal of 2024, including getting a pre-approval from the state. You know, so there has been a tremendous amount of work and money and time and effort that have gone to get us to this point. So I feel like, to answer to your question, like why not just wait, right? We've already done so much. And so like, why not just go a little bit further to try to get, if they do, when they fund school construction and we have a need, why not try to get there first, get there early, you know, if we're trying to optimize for affordability. But yes, ma'am.
I wanted Charlie's comments on, because the question I asked you about why do we have to approve a bond for 112 million when we're only going to be on the hook for 84, the local taxpayers. I kind of understood a little bit from what you were saying about how the cost would be allocated, or that, like you were talking about Rhode Island and how they pay for the bond payments and the interest payments. Is that what you're anticipating, that it might be structured like that? So
It's kind of like if your kid buys a car and you're a cosigner, say you're going to pay for the loan. Kids kind of figured out how much they have to come up with.
yeah, but I wouldn't. I don't want to
Yeah.
co-sign this.
Yeah, so I don't mean to belittle it, but I think that's really one of the best comparisons, because what you're talking about is the loan is for the full 111, but the actual amount that is going to have to be paid for by local taxpayers is net of the amount that the state is contributing towards it.
Well, what I'm concerned with is, you know, we don't even know where the state sources are going to be.
Yeah.
And so we don't, you know, if it's 2.5 years and we want to start right away, we're in a rush.
Yeah.
And so we're on the hook up front for the whole thing.
No, no.
Because
not-
that's how the
only if
bond
we get the
payments
28
are
million.
structured. You
Yeah, right,
start
only if we get-
repayment.
right.
But that's not what the question says. We don't incur the debt unless we get the 25%. We don't incur the debt
Then why
unless
do
we
we
get the
have to
20.
approve the full amount?
Because that's what the state law requires in order to be eligible for the bond, for the program.
Right, we have to vote on it in
I
order
don't know
to.
enough about that, honestly.
Yeah,
But
so I
I
don't-
think that's the
We
right
have to vote on
answer.
it, and if we don't vote on it, then we can't get the.
We can vote on 84 million.
So Charlie, let me ask you a question.
I want, you know, I really wanted to, and I spent my Christmas break emailing with lawyers and finance directors who repeatedly kept telling me no. I was like, I want to have the 84 million on the question, and they're like, you can't do that legally because we won't be eligible. And so like, I
So what will the pressure be on the legislators if we pass this, and that all ball will be in their court, right? I mean, in terms of the state, to supply both the construction and the decoupling, right?
Yeah, so if the question is contingent on the decoupling from excess spending and also about having that other 25%. So the first is on the decoupling. So I think Seth did a good job in describing how that works right now. Right now, the excess spending threshold is incurred when your per pupil spending goes up over $16,400. And anything over that amount gets taxed twice, essentially. So the school is already above the excess spending threshold. So you're in the penalty phase already. So that means that anything tied to the construction aid is going to be taxed twice. So by decoupling it, what it means is that all that school construction payments would not be taxed twice. The challenge that we have, first of all, Woodstock and Mountain Views is the poster child for why it should be done. Whenever I talk to anybody in the education committees or in the tax committees, they say, yes, we understand Woodstock's issue. Okay, fine. And they always say Woodstock, and I don't mean to not say the rest of the school district. So we need to do that. It hasn't happened yet, but we need to do that. So that the bill in the House is now in the Committee on Ways and Means. My committee just got there on Friday, so we don't have testimony scheduled this week, hope to do it next week, so we hope to ramp that up. The second part is on the state aid, and where is that now? Is that we don't have it secured yet. If So if it isn't raised, what happens, I don't know what happens, you've been talking to the lawyers, what happens to the bond? If you have an approval and one of those things is true but not both, I don't think you
Oh,
go
yeah,
forward
no,
with it. Yeah.
it's, the question is contingent on satisfying both of those criteria. And so what that does is that those are what I affectionately refer to as cost containment strategies. Let's make sure we don't get taxed, penalized 2x for the debt, and let's make sure that we get 25% from external sources. And so if we do not satisfy those two criteria, we cannot issue the debt. So if we do not have that, so that's in effect, and I know you were saying like, that sounds like double talk, that's just us following the rules and making the vote contingent on following the rules.
I still have trouble with
Full amount.
approving the full amount. I just do. It's out the door, and then it's like, oh, well, we
I see.
got,
Yeah, there's two.
you know.
Yeah. There's two questions. Bruce, you have a question, and then we'll go back to Brandon.
There's a couple of other items on the ballot, and two of them, they concern maintenance that needs to be done. So this is in addition to what we're voting on, as far as a new school is concerned. So this maintenance, one of them has to do with heating, I believe, and the other has to do with septic. Are these two things going to be incorporated into the new school, or are they going to get tossed when the
Well,
new
the septic
school
won't, but
gets-
the boiler will. The boiler could be reused in other schools in the district. Yes, that part of it. I don't know about the septic. I mean, that's
The
basically.
boiler would be reused, that's
Yeah.
my understanding from the facilities
It's
manager, but the.
Not
septic
necessarily
would
in
not.
this school, but in other schools in the district. It's the same, yeah.
1958 it was installed.
The other thing that was on my mind is both you, Seth, and Charlie mentioned that we draw from 27 towns.
28.
So are all 27 towns being taxed for this school also?
That includes,
No.
How many-
So
how many
there's 7
towns are-
towns that would share the cost of the bond,
right.
7?
right? So that's,
The other is school
And then
choice
the other-
students, correct? The other is school choice
you're hired.
students.
Okay.
Right?
That's right, that's exactly right.
No, I've been-
It's the 7 towns, so the 7 towns,
Been through this.
Reading, Woodstock, Barnard, Pomfret,
Right.
So these
all the way
other
to
towns
Killington. And
that,
then, but like, there's towns like, if you're sending from Pittsfield,
Well, it wasn't, I didn't count Pittsfield, but non-accounting Pittsfield is like 41, and,
So 41 students are.
I don't
yeah, there may
have-
be,
But-
if you count Pittsfield, then that's a
I don't know
whole,
this.
that's right, Pittsfield.
yeah.
If
But the
other
town pays for them
towns,
to come.
20
Right.
more towns we draw from, do they pay a surcharge or anything to go to school here?
Yeah.
Yes.
They do?
Yeah, they
Yes.
pay the announced
I didn't
tuition
know.
rate to Woodstock Union Middle
Right.
School.
Another
It's
thing.
$22,500, I believe.
It's like when we had school choice years ago, we paid the towns where our kids went.
Yeah. So
We don't have that anymore.
the school takes pretty good track of the number of students and which towns they're coming from, what the
Right.
financial impact is. And I know this to be true. So there are a number of students that were tuitioning to Woodstock with the hope that the town would vote to build a new school. And those students chose to go elsewhere when the vote went
Went
down.
down.
So even though the school has maintained 1,001 students over the past 3 years, as of the official census date on October 1st, the number of tuition students that are coming in has actually gone down, and that cost about $300,000 in lost revenue.
Wow.
So that's a real impact. I mean, the students that are opting to come to the high school and middle school.
But then if they do redistricting those kids, and school choice goes away, then that's another ballgame.
Yeah, so Heartland has school choice, and Heartland
Yeah.
sends students to Sharon, Hanover,
Yeah.
Hartford, Windsor, not as many to Woodstock as you would think.
Yeah.
I think we get about 12 or
Is
so.
that-
I just have it here. We got about 12 in the,
From Hartford,
From
Heartland?
Hartford.
Yeah, probably.
Brandon had a question, and that gentleman just with the.
Yeah, just, you said like 3, maybe 5 times, this thing that, the 111, the 84, you're saying that we cannot, even if the bond passes, if any of the state parts fall apart, we can't issue the debt, we won't, it's dead. Am I hearing that correctly?
Unless we have secured the 28 million, which is 25% of the cost, we cannot issue the debt.
Yeah.
So we need to have, grant agreements for that.
You love that, let's make a donation.
Yeah, we're looking to you, Brandon. Yeah.
And let me just tell
Donate.
you, anybody that wants to join the fundraising committee is welcome. Okay. Yes, sir?
I'm curious, you talked a lot about the costs of the plan being driven by regulations that the state is imposing. I'm curious if there's any major cost drivers that aren't being driven by things that you guys have to comply to. Like, I've heard about the sports complexes. Like, I haven't seen a breakdown of what drives that cost. So I'm curious if there's things that are technically optional, or we just say we really value them, but we're not mandated to have them.
Well, we're providing the 2026 version of the 1958 school, to meet code. And when we say like regulations, it's like fire suppression, right?
Right.
There's no sprinkler system in there right now. So if we were to have a fire, technically that's to code because it's grandfathered in, but we've got
It's roof support. I mean,
we've got, like when you talk about like, there's just basic things. I'm looking at some of the notes from the builder. Just like in the lifetime of the building, worried about the infrastructure and the foundation. We were giving a tour of the facility the other day, and all the sewer pipes are cemented into the ground. And the tunnels that you can access those panels are like, you have to go into some sort of manhole, and then you have to shimmy through, and people don't even want to go in there to maintain them, and they're becoming clogged. And it's both the waste pipes and the water pipes,
Sorry to be clear, I'm talking about the new build, not
Is the
renovation.
septic system included in the new build?
Like, are there things in the new build?
I'm not sure, hope so too. Is it?
I don't,
We don't know?
if you think a gymnasium is excessive, if you think like the redoing, replacing the football field, is excessive, but I'm just saying we're not, like, one of the things was everybody would like to have a track because our track team runs around the graveyard, right? We're not having a track. We're not doing, anything that was a nice to have, it is not in the
It was
budget.
also in the river corridor anyway.
You spoke about regulation, you were talking about, that was classroom size, I think what, size, that's what was referring to.
What's the per pupil classroom?
I have no idea.
I don't know, I was just curious.
I just
Are
know
there
the square
20 kids in a class? Are there 30? Are there 10?
I know that the square footage size.
Yeah, I know it depends on the class, but I was just curious.
But the answer is there's, beyond meeting code and providing the services that the school is doing and will in the future, there's certainly not excessive spending. But I know you've had was there another question here? Yes, sir.
Yeah, just wondering, so since this is going to be contingent on these two things, the state funding and dropping the double tax penalty, whatever, is there some sort of statute of limitations that we have to worry about running out? Like, after which time we're gonna have to do this all over again because we haven't secured either of those two things, and now it's been 2 years, and it's gonna have to come up again, and now the cost is higher, like, can we just wait out the clock on meeting those contingencies until whenever that happens, and then it will for sure go through? Or is there a possibility that it's like, well, it's been 5 years, and now we gotta do it all over again?
The answer is there's not a statute, there's not a sunset on this. And we think we can ride it out for a couple of years, and it'll depend on things that are outside of our control, really. And if let's say costs go down, that'd be great. Let's say costs go up, and if we had to proceed, we'd have to come back and say, hey, we need a supplemental. I think that's totally speculative at this point, but something's got to be done, and this puts us, what I like about this, quite frankly, is if our community votes to fund 75% of the school, we can go and work on that 25%. Then we have like a really good hand to go to Montpelier and say, you guys said you want regional hubs. We followed this 7-year design process. We got a pre-approved plan. We're meeting all the regulatory requirements. We're a regional hub. You want to do this. We want to be your partner. Let's go. And I like that conversation a lot more than, you know, are we going to have to move kids into to trailers because there's sewage in the girls' locker room that's going into the cafeteria? You know, like that's the sort of fork in the road the board felt like we were at.
So when the school is under construction, where will the students be?
Yep. The school would be in the students would remain in the same school, and the school would be built next to it. On the football field.
It's not the same footprint.
So we would build on the same site on the football field. And then it would take, let's just say everything, let's just do the blue sky scenario.
Right.
We pass 75% of the bond, we get the other 25%. Charlie gets a triumphant vote on the penalty, and we put this out to bid in January of 2027.
Okay.
Construction starts spring of 27, kids are in the school in the fall of 29. That's if everything goes on schedule. That's a 2.5, and then
Right,
the displacement is the sports during the construction period,
Right.
and that would be accommodated at Pomfret or other sites.
Like sites, yeah, there's enough other sites. Just curious, okay.
Todd?
Just a question, budget-wise, how much, I guess, you know, there's a lot of uncertainty with big projects, right? As you know, Seth, I'm in project management.
That's 4 years.
How much contingency is built into the number that we're talking about? Because obviously you see these large projects go on, right? They'll say, oh, it's going to be $100 million, but at the end of the project, it's usually beyond the $100 million. Sometimes because of unknowns that surface, other times because of inflation, other factors. So I'm just curious as to how much of that risk is built into the number.
Yeah, there's a couple of contingencies. You know, there is, and there's a design contingency. There's a construction manager contingency. Let me get you a total. There's a decent contingency in here to accommodate some changes without being excessive. Is where we tried to land.
Yeah, I'm mostly, you know, curious because when you bond for a number, right? You've now bonded, and you're kind of set at that number.
Yeah.
But with bidding, if we're capping it, great, but contractors typically aren't going to be amenable to saying, oh, I'll cap out. Some may. So I'm just curious. I would love to get that information later, just for information.
I will get that to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
So I'm reading the language here on the article, and my question to you is, when you say 25% of the cost of the bond, are you including also principal and interest?
Yes, ma'am.
It doesn't say that there.
So that is an explainer. Well, first of all, I'll read, if you'd like, the question on the warrant.
Now, it has to be very specific. It says the district is awarded at least 25% of the amount borrowed. Doesn't reference anything about interest, which on 111 million is pretty substantial.
By definition, bond is principal and interest.
I'm sorry?
The definition of a bond includes principal and
But
interest.
in the article, it reads differently.
The article says, you're looking at, are you looking at the warning? Okay.
Is that the warning?
Shall the voters
warning.
of the Mountain Views Supervisory District authorize the District Board of Directors to borrow an amount not to exceed $111,950,000, subject to the reduction by federal or state grants and aid or other sources for the purposes of acquiring, constructing, equipping, and furnishing a new school, provided that the district is awarded at least 25% of the borrowed amount borrowed. Yeah, and if we're borrowing.
That doesn't include interest, unless you say it.
It does.
I can give you like 6 lawyers that told me it does. You know, I don't know. I understand that it does.
You wanted it to say in the bond, you wanted it to say.
Well, if you
in the
don't
warning.
specify it, it doesn't happen. That's my experience.
So you're thinking the wording should be different. Too late for that now. We're voting on it in a week or so.
My understanding is it does include the interest, it does contemplate the interest, and that the 25% is the total cost of the project. And that's how the budget was structured.
Yeah. If you don't specify it, it doesn't happen.
Any other questions? Well, I hope this was informative. Thank you for coming out on a Sunday night. I hear it's a holiday tomorrow, so.
Yes. Normally Vermont has all these people, but it's like.
Yeah, I'm working, but
They changed it.
if anybody needs more information, there's a lot of information on the website, and we're happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, guys. Good to see you.